We have Professor Bengal here to share with us the presentations on geoarchaeological approaches for understanding settlement history of the Delta of Bengal and its contact with neighboring countries. So, please come visit explain.
Which one? Last slide. আপনি এখান থেকে বলবেন? আপনি এখনই বলবেন? নাকি অন্যান্য?
না, উনি তো চেয়ার করবেন। না, চেয়ারটা করবেন। Should I start?
Yes, please. The floor is yours.
Okay. So no problem. That when the chair is here and the Dr. Chakraborty is here and the other scholars, so I don't have any problem. Okay, thank you. Respected chairs, Chairman sir. Respected Chairman sir and Dr. Chakraborty, respected Dr. Chakraborty, and the senior scholars and Professor Roy and friends. Now, as you know, that paper entitled the geoarchaeological approaches for understanding the settlement history of Bengal and its connections with neighboring countries. Now, first of all, before I discuss the main topic of the settlement history of the West Bengal, especially West Bengal, I would like to share a few words about the geoarchaeology. What is geoarchaeology? What is the functions and the role of geoarchaeology? Now, geoarchaeology, as you know, geoarchaeology, as you know, that it is a major discipline, involves two separate scientific disciplines, that is geology and archaeology. Very simply, we can define it that the application of geological techniques to answer the archaeological questions. And another is that it is a multidisciplinary approach which involves subject matter of geography, geology, geophysics, and other earth sciences to examine the archaeological data and thought. The geoarchaeology embraces the study of soil, sediments, geographical factors to contribute an archaeological study. It is also known as a field of environmental archaeology. Now, what is exactly the role of archaeology? Because the geoarchaeology aims to trace the human interactions with geosphere. Geoarchaeological investigations help us to recognize the landscape, the environmental change within a particular region. It also studies human behavioral pattern in its dynamic environment. This particular study allows us to determine the effects of environmental change of human societies. This is very important for any archaeological study, that the effect of environments. And from the geoarchaeological perspective, human life is always associated with nature. So, with a brief introduction of the geoarchaeological approaches, now I want to discuss main topic, that is the settlement history of Bengal chronology. Actually, my paper aims to highlight especially the settlement history of the Gangetic Delta region. And the Gangetic Delta is formed by the Ganges River empties into Bay of Bengal. The lower Ganges system encompasses two parallel channels, the Ganga Bhagirathi on the right and the Ganga on the left. In its upper non-tidal stretch, the Ganges is known as the Bhagirathi, while the lower portion is called Hooghly. The entire area near the mouth of the Gangetic Delta is crisscrossed by a network of tidal channels and distributaries of major rivers. And Eddie has mentioned the existence of 500 rivers once flowing in the region where the Ganges converges with the sea. Now the Delta region, this is the slide shows, it is the Delta Brahmaputra Delta region. But in Bengal Delta, especially in the West Bengal, when we are talking about the West Bengal Delta region, that it has three distinct zones, and it belongs to the neat basinal zone and Bengal Basin, and it's characterized the fluvial turn and ponds of typical estuary delta environment, and these three zones we find the upper part, that is simply the upper natural delta plain. It is also known as the Ganga surface, and which we also call the Mariman Delta. And in this particular geographical region, that three districts are located, that is Murshidabad, Nadia, and North Chowbish Pargana, 24 Parganas. So it is also known as not only the Moribund, but here we find the Mentary belt, a number of Mentary belts here. And now the second intermediary part, which is also very important for the settlement history, because in the three delta region zones, the Bengal has witnessed the growth of the number of settlements area, but especially the intermediate center region, and also it occupies in this particular region, intermediary region, that it occupies parts of Nadia, Bardhaman, not 24 Parganas, South Chowbish Parganas, parts of, and Bihara and Midnapur on both the banks of the Puri estuary. So, some of the districts are located here, but having in these districts we find archaeological remains archaeological remains, and not only that, we have a continuous settlement history in that particular region. And the lowest delta thing, which today my focus would be on that particular region, that is extensive and mud floods, swamps, mangrove marshes, creeks, and etc. constitutes a high intensity tide dominated active tide estuary delta, and it occupies only the 24 Parganas. So it is the lower part of this river, active zone, and here it falls, the Kashmir region falls within this particular geophysical area. So we will discuss this, and now the next, here you can see that the 24 Pargana coastal divisions, and here there are three sectors. That is, one is the Bokhari Reservoirs region, then the Ganga Sagar coastal region, and the Sundarban coastal sectors. And again, these are the two districts of the coastal plain, that is the Midnapur district and 24 Parganas, and Puru Midnapur, or the eastern part of the Midnapur district, the coastal division, and here you can see that the Dikha Shampur coastal sector. So these are the delta region, and the lower part, as you know, it is a creek region, it's a tidal creek region, and with the swamp marshes and full of mud floods. So the delta, when we are talking about the delta is an area of low mud floods where river splits and spreads out in several branches before entering the sea. A delta is demarcated by the sea on the site in which the deposit is formed, and on all others by the distributaries of the stream. The delta region has been commenced from the point where the Ganges has given off the distributaries. So, already I have told you that the Ganga is known as the Shapurati. That means the mouth of the river Ganges, where the Ganga meets the sea, then we find the 500s. That means the number of distributaries and the river channels here. So this is also important, that particular region for the settlement history. And now here is the map of these two districts and the 24 governors and the district map of Bengal. Now first I want to show you that I have pictured some of the sites so that you can get an idea about the settlement pattern or the settlement history of this particular region, that not 24 governors and the south 24 governors. Now talking with the God, I have selected a particular site, as you know that it is a very popular site, a very known site, and almost in the 1956 to 65, 66, that almost 10 years the site was excavated, considering 10 years. And we have several archaeological remains, and not only that, it is a multicultural site, and for these we have so many cultural remains, archaeological remains we have seen, we have found, discovered from this particular site. So here you can see that it is a fortified city, and that is just opposite to the fortifications. On the other side of this area, we find there is a temple site, which is also very characteristic of Bengal, and other parts of that is within the city, periphery or outside the city, we have the temples. So now this is the site, and I want to show you some of the characteristics of the cultural characteristics of the particular region. So some of the beautiful terracotta figurines, we have collected a large number of terracotta figurines from that particular region. So it is from early historic period. So early historic period is very rich, the cultural remains are very rich in both the Bengal district, coastal district, and also the 24 provinces. So here you can see these are some of the terracottas, but we have other antiquities like these, the coins, and many other early historic remains. Now here you can see that is the boat as well from this. It is also the indications of that it was connected to the waterways, probably indicating that the trade with the other regions. Now then another is the Bengal, the ancient city of the Bengal. It is also known as a port of Bengal, and the Jolini also mentioned that particular port town. Now it is that again we have a number of artifacts belonging to the early historic periods, and the potteries and the beads and the coins, birthmarks and other bust points, and now numerous potteries are there. But now this is the site, because earlier it is where the excavation had undertaken. It was in and around the Kondu region, and it was during the 1954, 55, and later on 74, 75. But it was within the periphery of the Kondu region. But it is believed now, the scholars believe that it is not properly identified the Kondu with the wonder, or the port city. But this is the site, absolutely on the banks of the river Rupnaran, from where we are getting the innumerable artifacts from that particular site, and some scholars believe that this was actually the Kambulik, the wonder, or the port city of Kambulik. So I noted that it is very interesting to see during the rainy season, it is absolutely covered with the water. So after when the water recedes, then we find the archaeological materials coming out from this particular city. So this is now some of the potteries. I want to give you time constraints. I have just showed you. I want to show you some of the pottery. So it is not very Indian type of pottery, but we don't have much of this pottery. These are some pottery I want to show you. Now this is another pottery that is related. I will discuss it later on why I have chosen that particular pottery for the interconnections of the connectivity with the other countries and other regions. So you just see that is the related bread. I will discuss it later on at the end of my lecture. These are some of the artifacts. And now we are moving to the 24 provinces. It is very interesting districts, and it has different physiographical features. I am not going into the details of the physiographical features, but it is absolutely full of the creeks, mud, swamps, sand dunes, and you can see how the distributaries are spread over all this region. So the South Chowbishwara Government, that is the 24 colonies, is very important for the settlement history, for the human habitations. We have a number of sites here, and here we can see that from the continuous cultural habitations from the early historic period, almost from 3rd, 2nd century BC onwards up to the 12th, 13th century. So it is very important for us because it belongs to the active delta region, and especially the coastal belt, it belongs to that particular place. Now we can see other important early historic sites. Some of these sites have been excavated, and most of these sites are explored sites. So that you can see the date on this, or the antiquities of that particular region. That is, the Tilpi is from the 3rd century BC to AD. So all these are from the early historic period. The settlement continues from the 3rd century BC up to the 12th, 13th century. But the last one, Pampandiki, which I have excavated in personal particular this site on behalf of my department. So I will show you some of the excavation, how we excavated this. This is only one cultural site. But now the city, when you are talking about the city, each and every city in that particular region, even in the Midnapur and the 24 colonies, these are multicultural, multi-occupational levels there. So it easily indicates us that it is well connected, and the city cannot be developed in isolation. So it is the big city or the big habitational center. Around the city we have a number of small settlement centers there. So these are the sites which we have in the South 24 colonies, and you can see that is a continuous cultural habitation or continuous settlements there. This is also an indication that when we find a particular site with the several occupational levels, with the several diverse cultural cultures, then it indicates that absolutely this particular site was well connected with other regions and also with other countries perhaps. I will show you later on. Now the TP is again in the 24 colonies, South 24 colonies. These are some sites and the chronological. It is excavated site by the Directorate of Archaeology, West Bengal. Again, from this particular site, we have collected that related bed. Now it is a diagnostic bed. I have picked up only a pottery, and through this pottery I will show that how it connected the other regions, other countries, and also other regions of India. So this is a terracotta figurines, beautiful terracotta figurines from the historic period, that Shungo and the Kushal period also. Now this is another, it is an explored site. But here we find the anchor, but I don't have the slide here right now. But the anchor indicates that definitely there were some waterways, and through this the boat came here and they anchored that particular region. You can see the points, and again here you can see the remain with the boat here, indicating that the connections with the others. And this is the related where it's a very true type of related where that we have this. Now the physical features, 24 columns suggest as important regions of coastal areas of West Bengal. The topographic feature of the coastal West Bengal reveals hardly any well-defined stage of its evolution. It represents a typical delta street with almost a flat rim. Now actually the South 24 columns shows that numerous islands interspersed by many streams, innumerable distributaries and tidal creeks. The Hooghly River and its distributaries form the entire drainage system. So it is again the mud characterized by the mud floods, swamps, marshes, creeks, and forms a high intensity tide-dominated, very active tidal estuary. These are the physical features. I am not going into the details of this. This is the geographical and geophysical conditions of the delta region. So it is quite different from the other parts of Bengal or the Bengal plain. Now I start with this excavations. I want to show you this is as a director of excavations. I excavated that particular region, particular site. It is absolutely stands in that Kangundiki and Raidiki. The Kangundiki is a left bank and the Raidiki is a right bank of Mani River, and it is known as the gateway of Sundarban. So you can easily understand that it is very important for understanding the settlement history of that particular region. Now this is the explored site. We are exploring that first places that there are a number of mounds here. But we selected the largest one. We have selected for our excavations. This is the excavation beside them. And now you can see the mangrove forest, and here you can see the Mani River. Just opposite, just the left bank, we find this particular mound. And this is, you can see that the character of the Sundarban, it reflects also that character. This is a huge mound and almost 60 by 60 meters. These are the excavated trenches. My students are walking in these particular trenches. Just a quick survey of this. There are flow, and that also there are walls, running walls north to south. And these are our excavated sites. The massive wall running this storage. Again, this is a huge storage. And it is the base of the square platform, and probably since it is a Buddhist site, Buddhist settlement site, because we have found the Buddhist teachings from that particular site. So probably it is the base of this Buddha, but it is not clear now, because we got this very just 1 or 2 years for identifying the site. This is the floor, and now you can see the cells for the Buddhist monks. And now these are the streets. Now, before the excavations of that particular site, we have definitely on the northern part, one by another sites. We have the early medieval site because it belongs to the 10th, 11th century. But the cultural picture of the early medieval period or the settlement history was not clear. But now, with the help of these excavations and other materials coming from other regions, that the picture of the early medieval society or early medieval cultures are now becoming very clear in that particular Bengal region. These are some potteries. You can see. Now I'm going to show you just I have a very little evidence of this, that over the Greek you can find the plaster of the stucco material. So it is the tradition of, in the ancient time, there is a plastering of that particular wall, or plastering, or as a mortar it is used. But from where the idea came? Now if you see that the stucco was extensively used in the Roman world, and even in this Roman or even in the Pompeii, we have seen that it is a beautifully plastered the ceiling and the walls. Now, almost from 2nd century BC onwards, that we find the increasing use of that particular stucco materials in that particular region. And the best example is that the Alcameno site. If you visit the Alcameno site, then it is a Roman emporium. You will find the structure is covered with the beautiful stucco, that particular plaster. So, just Shushmita right in the earlier session mentioned that how the idea traveled, not only the object traveled, but the idea traveled. So I am just, I want to show you that how the idea came from that particular region, from traveling through that the Roman world and through this particular southern India, and then from the eastern coastal region. Now I have just presented a paper on that particular use of stucco, and it is came from that particular Roman world very recently at Queen's University, Belfast. And we appreciated it because it is absolutely correct that the thrust came from that Roman world, and then we received that idea. It's not that the directly material we have received, but the idea we have definitely received, and that is why in most of the Buddhist sites and even in the archaeological, in the early historic sites, we are getting the evidence of the plaster of the stucco. So these are some of the materials. And now another, why I am showing that particular site, it is early medieval site. You can see that the upper part, you can see it is the analysis of that materials. Here you can see the stucco aquameters, we find the particles, the small particles of the marble. Now the question is from where they get the marble stone. Here, Bengal is not the place, but perhaps it came from the Arab region, and the stone especially, as already pointed out by Dr. Gautam Singh Gupta, that it came from the Chitranagpur Plateau region and the hills and some Shingong region. So here we find that probably that again it raises some questions that from a marble came in West Bengal. So this is also a problem, and now these are all the iron. This is the in situ position of the sculptures. This is the Buddhist site. A quick survey. These are all from this particular site, and from Nairobi, that beautiful image of Buddha, right side Buddha, standing Buddha, was collected from the mud of the pond or the huge tank. We collected that particular site. Now again, I want to show you, give me some time to show you that again there are particular settlement area which is very, very important in the delta Bengal. So that is the Sagar Island, and the Sagar Island, you can see, this is the Sagar Island. It is a Hooghly estuary, we call it. So the right side is a range one is a Sagar Island, and it is covered, and you can see that the western part is in the Bhakala river and the Hooghly river is at the two sides, and the southern face is open to the sea. So it is this island is bounded by the Hooghly river in the west. The land surface of the Sagar Island had faced erosion for several times in last few centuries. Hooghly estuary had faced several changes of courses, the navigable channels since second half of the 18th century. Now it is the largest and most stable land of the Hooghly estuary, and according to the Professor Shunanda Bandyopadhyay, that in its the present form, during the Sagar Island, we find the present form. It is established in 1967 to 69. And in the land was scattered mangrove forest, swamp, marshes, waterways, and small rivers. So this is the Sagar Island, but it is again another center, another core area for the settlement of the human settlements. And from the early history, this is the Sagar Island. You can see it is the erosions and that particular the region. It is a map of 17, perhaps 1780 or something. The 18th century map gives us the idea of the Sagar Island. This is the geomorphology. I am not going into the details. This is the village. You can see this is how it is studied with a number of settlements. And this is the potteries. These are some potteries. Again, you can see that almost from the 2nd, 3rd century BC onwards, and then up to 12th century, we find the archaeological remains from that particular region. But here we do not have any excavations, only on the explored materials we see, we can trace the settlement history, the settlement pattern of this. Now this is the structure of the color. It is also inside the Sagar Island. This is also from the Sagar Island. It is one of the best. It is the best collection from the Sagar Island. It is now Asmodean Museum. It is kept at the Asmodean Museum, and as you know that it is almost the 10th, 11th century. It is now it is still there in the Asmodean Museum, and you can easily understand that how the settlement was very rich and culturally very rich, and they produced such type of sculptures from that particular region. This was now in a very interesting site, but I have visited the site. Again, it is in the tree. That means it is a confluence of the two rivers, that is the Thakuran and the Jagodal. It is absolutely a site which is located in the trees of in the leaves of the sugar palm. It is inaccessible region, and it is very difficult to get access in this where presently it is under the control of the forest department, but it is absolutely a tender site because now I am just try to finish it, that it is a tandem site. And the tandem site, you can see when the water recedes, then the archaeological remains are coming up. And then you can see that large number of charitable figurines belonging to the Gupta period coming up from that particular site. So it was probably a production site. And from this site, that item probably traveled to other regions also. So these are the sites, all belong to this visual image.
All from Sagar.
All from Sagar. So that is it's not the Sagar, it is just another site, another tangled site, that is Kanchi. This is the inscriptions, the seals. You can see the Gupta inscriptions are there, Gupta script are there. These are all from the site. Now I came to the last, just a few words about the connectivity, because it is we are focusing on the Bengal's connectivity with other lands and other countries. Now the Roman, particularly related work, the classical Roman related work came from the Roman world through the trade, and now we have several such evidences in the southern India, Radigan and others. But when we reach to Bengal, it is absolutely that not the classical one, but it is absolutely probably imitated pottery, and it is of course a formidable work was done by the Gotke, V. Gotke, and he mentioned that it is from the X-ray diffraction analysis that he mentioned that it was a locally made. So there are two centers from Tamil and the Chandrakinpur, and then from there it spread over, it diffused to the other region of the Southeast Asian region, and probably that particular pottery diffused, that is with the traders and the Buddhist monks were responsible for this diffusion. So this is the Tamil pottery, and now another thing is that it is from Chatrubo, again 24 as you can see how beautiful that particular pottery with the related work. Vimala Begle has a pioneering work, has done a pioneering work here. But again, I want to show you that is how it diffused to the other region. This is Gurinaranpur, 24 autonomous. But it is very interesting to see that even in the Southeast Asia, especially not only in Bangladesh, but in the Sri Lanka, in Myanmar, in Malaysia, and many others, that even in Vietnam, we have that particular pottery. So it is very interesting to find that in 1993, Ian Glover excavated a particular site, Trang Kyo, perhaps you know that particular site in Vietnam, and he found a small pottery granulated bed. Now, what is interesting to me is that he remarked that it is a classical pottery, Roman pottery, and the petrographic composition, what he found, is similar to that of origami. So it is very interesting to know that the classical Roman pottery ultimately reached to this, and now we have first paper, so we have a separate center of productions, perhaps, but definitely we need some research work on this, the connectivity. But through this particular pottery, we can connect our country, our region, to the Southeast Asian countries and other parts of India. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Dula, for sharing this fantastic talk about the region integrated health trust and also some of the important sites. We have time for a few questions. Do you have any questions directed to Professor Dula?
I have a question. Is there any evidence to show the ancient name of Chandragirika? How it was found?
Actually, Chandragiri word has been identified by some scholars as from that is the complete number has been identified by probably nothing has been identified. No one's identified to make
I used to like Gange within bracket question mark.
Definitely. It is a question mark, and even the Tamilipta wonder, that is the Tamilipta quote, we cannot identify. We say Tamilipta quote, but we cannot identify properly that particular quote. We have the textual references, but not.
Later, some stories get cropped up, na? Look at it.
No, very recently, I don't know, find, please don't mind, a particular book came out from your department, that is Gangarite, identification of the Gangarite, with that particular site, that is Manchi. It is particular site, but sorry to say we are not in the position to identify that particular region. To us, to me, at least it is a tidal infested, tidal site, so it cannot be that the huge Ganga Rashtra, what we call the Gangarite, the depiction, the description given by the Vedas and Ptolemy. So we cannot now agree with this view right now. Thank you.
Is there any other questions? I have one question about this Stako clustering. Because we also excavating a site in Kedah, Peninsular Malaysia. We found the stupa and we suspect that the stupa is also made out of Stako. It's clustering. And the Buddha statues found there are also made of Stako. So my question is there any other sites besides this kind
There are several sites in India. Most of the Buddhist sites are clustered sometimes, and now in Bengal we have a beautiful evidence of this. That Mughal Mali, it is a huge Buddhist monastery complex where we find a beautiful clustering, just like this wall. So beautiful clustering of that with the stucco materials, and even the images with the stucco material we find the images.
If I may just add, for this which Durgati just mentioned, there is an article by Dr. Channal and myself which was published where Dr. Channal specifically identified this relation of some of the stucco materials and very strong collection with Batujara. In the Batujara excavation, the stuccos are very similar to the stuccos from Mughal market. So I can give you later the.
Actually, this time, what I have read at the Queen's University, this time I am just looking for that the root of that particular site, how it came from the Alkameru and from there it sprayed over, that the idea of course sprayed there. But actually the root from that particular stucco used as a material, as a mortar and a plaster. So we have several such evidences. Yeah. Huh?
If I intervene at this place, there is a lot of
Yeah, Uttanga has a very beautiful paper that's particular.
if I intervene, there is a lot of confusion about stucco and plaster. Dr. K. M. Verma's pioneering work on stucco, published some 50 years ago, clearly revealed two very important points. The nearest correspondence of stucco in Indian textual tradition is Shuddha.
Yes.
Shuddha. Shuddha is made of,
Lime or something.
let me take this point, lime and sand, very fine grained lime with some little adhesive material. So this is most of the stucco images. Bengal has a very rich tradition of stucco, and I don't think Alkameru or Rome or Macedonia or Greece are very is. The Bengal artists of the ancient period were quite capable of producing images out of a combination of lime and sand with a bit of adhesive. Again, all locally available. Plaster is a different thing, and again we know pretty well that one of the important components in the technique of stucco is dust of gypsum. I am sure none of the, I got some example, for example, Rockton of Avila, and you get very fine stuff. Couple of stucco pieces. One or two got underlined, one or two got gypsum. So stucco has a completely independent, indigenous, local origin and development. And plaster, the tradition of plaster went on and there have been refinement in the plaster. Many things have been added to the plaster apart from the chunam and lime, chunam and sand. Therefore, this chopped husk, etc., to make the plaster strong. So plaster and stucco are two different materials, and we must not get confused over these two categories and try to put them together.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Shenguttu, but I wanted to mean it, but wanted to say that is a stucco, that means used as a plastering the wall. It is not I am using that one the plaster, but it is a plastering the wall with the help of the stucco material. So it's always it is used.
Signal and line and sand. Combination.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
bit of adjacent material.
Yeah.
It may be jaggery, it may be some plant, roots of some plant. There are many options. So, if you look at the writer's music, there are stucco figures on the top of it. Doesn't mean that they are not locally, they are brought lock, stock and barrel from England and installed over the So, that is, I think, the early tradition of stucco stucco figure. And also in Bihar, for almost all the major businesses like Nalanda, everywhere you have a stucco statue, and they're going to stucco statue. Plastering will be.
Yeah, can I add? Actually, I agree with Professor because ultimately we don't have line plaster in the early history. As
No,
far
it's
as,
a little late.
yeah, because as far as I understand, none of the early historic sites we have stucco evidence. We get very clear in the Mandakapattu inscriptions of Mahendra Verma, clearly mentioning that Asutam, he is making this structure without. So I would like to know where is the earliest evidence for the use of line plaster or stucco? Do you know? Because
But the Shubha is mentioned in the Vinay Pitaka. That particular word is used in Vinay.
Primary, Dr. K.M. Burman, people are forgetting the classics. Dr. K.M. Burman was very important scholar who taught aesthetics to the music faculty of Vishwan for several years and wrote a number of very significant books. He ensured that he produces the books, he writes the text, he produces the book and he has it for his marketing. So his book did not reach many places, but it was reviewed very generously. Major international journalists, articles were shared, our facilities, etc. So, Shubha is primary, at least Dr. Verma cited most of the evidence from South Indian Audubon.
actually, very interestingly, at Pattanam, we have to mix up line with the laterite. That is one of the earliest evidence dating to first century BC.
For plastering,
Yeah, for putting over, they have a bar structure. So they have consolidated using laterite granules and lime.
that place is
It is a local use.
Yeah, laterite plus
Locally it's always there.
Yeah.
Something. Because now you can see in Bengal we find the marble granules. How it is
Actually,
possible?
Elizabeth Nightingale, who studied Archimede Aphora, she misidentified something as porcelain or cement used in Rome. But later on, Roberto Thomas said this is not porcelain, it is something different. Thank you.
Alright, thank you very much for this very interesting discussion. We can talk about it during the break furthermore. Is there any other questions? If not, so I am about to close these sessions and so that we can proceed to the next concluded session. Once again, please give a round of applause to Professor Gunnar for sharing her idea with us.
Now we will move on with to our next academic session. It will be on the role of Bengal Basin and Bay of Bengal contacts with Asia in history of urbanization. It would be chaired by Professor Durga Basu and the speaker would be Professor Priscilla Namrata Rosario. Cecilia Rosario. I have witness.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I would like to give my heartfelt thanks to the organizers for giving me an opportunity to present a piece of the research work which forms a larger part of my doctoral thesis. And for my doctoral thesis, I had worked on the Catholic community of Bengal. And as we know, this community is very dynamic in nature. It has a very strong lineage, it has a very age-old history. And a part of this community's history lies with the coming of the first of the European trading community to the ports of shores of Bengal, and that is the Portuguese. And from the coming of the Portuguese, we have seen the development of a newer type of urbanization taking place in Bengal. Not to say that urbanization was absent in Bengal, I'm not denying the fact, but of course with the coming of the Europeans to the shores, what took place was now ports or port cities began to be developed, and of course an important part that was played in the development of this entire structural being was the churches. The churches played an important role in fostering a newer form of urbanization. So this paper has 2 to 3 kinds of intersectionalities, 2 to 3 underlying factors. The first of the factors that we look is into the historical development of the coming of the Portuguese and their trading activities into the region of Bengal in the 16th century, and how that led to the establishment of an urban center in Bengal, which had its own distinct characteristics. Then it would seek to analyze the dialogue between the Portuguese merchants and the missionaries who also came with them, and with the political authorities, both Indian in nature, and their interactions with the indigenous community of the region, which led to the growth of an urban center with its own distinct culture. And then it would, in a very cursory manner, would like to see that how this interaction, which started off as a trading interaction, which then led off to a political interaction with the intersections of a new faith coming up, led to the development of a new urban sector. So the position of Bengal and how the geographical position of Bengal, the maritime nature of Bengal has been beautifully portrayed in the sessions that we have been hearing from the morning, and we see that Bengal is very strategically placed, and it provided a refuge for all kinds of people, including adventurers and skilled navigators like the Portuguese. And during the medieval period, the Bay of Bengal became an intermediate maritime zone in the larger exchange networks linking Indian Ocean with the Mediterranean and the Atlantic worlds. So what we see is that, covered by the pattern of northeast monsoon winds, the region exhibited a remarkable degree of unity and commonality. The underlying factor that I want to bring about is the aspect of commonality as far with regards to the movement of commodities, people and ideas that was concerned. And here I would like to quote J.J.A. Campos, who has done the seminal work on the Portuguese in Bengal, and is taken to be the father of the history of the Portuguese in this region. And he says that the association of the Portuguese with Bengal, despite the fact that it has disappeared long ago by a number of centuries, is still discernible quite vividly in their relics here, that we speak eloquently of their presence, have proved to be in the site of palaces built by modern architects, and many of the sites of their factories are lying in desolation today. But it is still more remarkably striking to be taken proper cognizance as not the mere historical remains of the Portuguese in Bengal, speaking eloquently of their old day of prosperity here, but the silent forces generated by the Portuguese in this province, leaving a permanent imprint of their own on the manifold walk of life in India in general and Bengal in particular. To give a little bit of the background of the Bengal and Portugal interaction, we see that the Portuguese made their maiden visit to Bengal in the 16th century, and it was in many ways an important period in the political, social and religious and cultural and economic history of Bengal. Why? Because the Portuguese were the foremost Europeans who revealed the mystery of East to the West, and were the first to establish intimate contact between the two, and were also the carriers of the first impression of the East in the Western world. And these impressions were therefore more profound and lasting than it usually was recognized before. Particularly, the role of Portuguese is very well known as pioneers of European commerce in Bengal, and this is an area which is still not sufficiently recognized. Now, as chartered companies swept the shores of the Indian Ocean, the 16th century heralded a new era of imperialism. Networks of European empires began interacting with the local kingdoms in the domain of trade that often cut into the political arena, and it weaved a newer web of power struggles, and it offered fresher boost of complex of dominations that reshaped the conventional urban pattern in Bengal. So the process of transition had undoubtedly kicked in. The Portuguese interruption only accelerated the process. At the close of the 16th century, a clear perception of the urban hierarchy and urban pattern began to originate. The air by the 16th century in Bengal now reeked of trade and commerce, and Bengal as a region witnessed the advent of yet another new force from even newer lands and with still a newer faith. There were fresher experiences of struggle and defiance that was being driven towards monopoly, and all of these was registered in the rise, growth and decline of towns and cities. The trade in Bengal had been a very lucrative option is a fact that has been recognized very widely in all the sources and travel accounts of this period. If we look at the work of Ralph Fitch, he had left accounts of the extensive Portuguese settlements in Bengal, which he painted a picture of richness and prosperity. Ample incentives lay in Bengal, therefore 40 Portuguese to set up factories and trading bases here. The Portuguese had already made a huge presence in the western part of India, headed by the envoys of Vasco da Gama, was quick to realize that the worth of Bengal, since he had written back in Portugal, that, and I quote, the country could export quantities of wheat, very valuable cotton goods, cloths which sell on the spot or 22 shillings and 6 pence fetch 90 shillings in Calicut, and it abounds in silver. So what we see is that the Portuguese already, who were trying to make an inroad in the parts of Bengal, had a kind of constant flinch of hostilities and distrust between the native rulers and some indigenous merchants, which led to a lot of power struggle and disruption. What is interesting to note here is that how the early modern era brought in an intense intermingling in the domain of politics and trade in Bengal, so much so that the port town of Chittagong, which had been swinging between governors of Bengal and Arakan, became the restive site of struggle and fiasco. So what we see is that a curious mix of mercantile and political element meant that power now acquired a new color and language. The entry of Portuguese traders who made their presence felt in Bengal all of a sudden pretty much strongly made the political actors sit up and reckon these elements as newly sprouting forces. The interplay of all these forces and powers initiated a different urban pattern. To borrow the words of Abrams, such emerging patterns were highly complicated, many-sided, and it is such patterns that towns preeminently invite us to identify and understand them. Bengal's urbanization also took its twists and turns according to these nuances and complex of domination. So I would just skip over the part which kind of talks about how the Portuguese heralded this onslaught of the coming of the Europeans, and would just go to the part of the urbanization much more vehemently. What we see is that the vibrant port towns started becoming increasingly important for political control in the following decades. The major port towns of this time were Chittagong and Shatgaon, which came to be known as Porto Grande or the Great Port, and the Porto Picono or Little Port respectively. They served as trading bases for the Portuguese factories for a long time. In scouting through the archival material, I came across one of the intelligence reports of the very earliest Portuguese visitors to Bengal, Fernão Lopes de Cassianda, who revealed that the importance of Chittagong as a promising port for the Portuguese. Described as a city well served with water so that every road flowed with a ribeiro, which is a brook, which were covered by bridges that served the roads with the casadeias or the low-lying houses. Chottigram or Chittagong seemed to be a lucrative commercial base for the first Portuguese settlement. However, as we all know the maiden story of Chittagong, no sooner had its potential been realized, there was a pressing desire for the acquisition of this town, permitting the Portuguese to settle there inevitably provoked frictions with the Mughal officials posted in Bengal. And what we see is that complaints from the Mughal governor at Chittagong that the Portuguese trading ports were causing a significant reduction in their revenue earnings thus grew. On the geographical side, what we see is that the port of Satgaon, on the other hand, due to the extreme silting, soon became very obsolete, so that a Mughal Farman granted the Portuguese to found a new settlement, that is with the name of Hooghly, in 1579. Portuguese expansion in India and Bengal therefore ran parallel with the progress of the Mughal rule in India, and we see Bengal was ruled by the sultans who enjoyed a sort of autonomy by virtue of his remote situation. And there is a little bit of a small incident which I want to bring about, which was the first triggers of urban settlement, as I put in my research paper, where we see in 1536 Sultan Ghiyazuddin Mahmud Shah favored the Portuguese and allowed maritime Alfonso de Melo to build factories in Chittagong and Satgaon and offered them custom duties of these two ports. When Sher Shah invited Gaur for the second time in 1538, Sultan Ghiyazuddin Mahmud Shah requested the Portuguese to help. This was the beginning of the mercenary services of the Portuguese in favor of the Sultan and of giving them more land to trigger off the urbanization process. Now, how do we situate this advent of urbanization? The Portuguese who came to Bengal every year, I'm talking about the traders who came in every year, they traded, they went away, so it was a kind of an ongoing process. We don't see much of very permanent settlement until 1599 when the Augustine missionaries came in. At the beginning, they used to raise temporary houses of straw to stock their goods and remain there during the rainy season, with which they brought there and sold their goods. Now, the year 1576 saw Bengal coming under the Mughal rule and Akbar, and Mughal Emperor, having heard about the precious goods which Portuguese brought to Bengal from Borneo, Malacca and other parts, ordered the Nawab of Dhaka, who held charge of the Hooghly district, to send from Satgaon two principal Portuguese to the imperial court in Agra. The people who were sent to give a visit to Akbar was Pedro Tavares, and we see Akbar was favorably impressed with the conduct of Tavares and had several interviews with him. The Mughal emperor also gave valuable presents, but most importantly, he gave a farman which permitted them to build a city in Bengal. Apart from this, the emperor also granted the Portuguese full religious liberty with sanction to preach the religion, to build churches, and most importantly, to convert the indigenous population if they willingly gave their consent. Therefore, we see the start of the urbanization process as in a much more vehement manner, the coming of the first of the Catholic community in Bengal. Due to this farman, what we see, the Portuguese setting up the first of the Catholic churches that Bengal came to know, which later very famously known as the Bengal Church, and that becomes the focal point of urbanization. So this site which the Portuguese chose was flourishing with amazing rapidity. And when I went through the older archival materials that are still preserved in the Bengal Church, we see one of the papers of Father João Cabral, who says that, and I quote him, Hooghly became the common emporium of the vessels of India, China and Malacca and Manila, and a resort for not only a large number of Hindustanis, but for the Mughals, the Persians and the Armenians. Father Cabral, in his papers, also asserts that the Portuguese did not confine themselves to the banks of the Hooghly River, but extend their settlements further inland. The number of Portuguese was fast increasing in Hooghly, and so were the number of Catholics who were converted by the Portuguese, which heralded the onset of a rapid urbanization, and it became an offshoot of the port city. In 1599 marks another important kind of a watershed with the coming of the Augustine missionaries who came from Portugal to build a convent, and we see just a little bit of a background. The word Bengal is actually derived from the Persian word bandar, meaning a wharf or a port. And why did the Portuguese call the settlement of Bengal or the Obelium of Bengal? Because it was the most formidable fort or port city that they had kind of building. And it is to be noted here that certain other parts of Bengal and India and the western part was also coming under the Portuguese influence, which they also called as Bengal. What we see is that towards the end of the 18th century, slowly the word Bengal began to be disassociated from Hooghly and came to be regarded as the place itself, like we know today. Looking at the writings of Sebastian Manrique, he says that it was founded soon after Manuel Tavares in virtue of the farman that Akbar had given to them. However, contradictory to that, the Augustinian missionaries and their work, going through their work, we see that it only came into being in 1599. However, we see that Hooghly came to be the first urban spot in Bengal, or the Port of Bengal. Due to the paucity of time, I'm just glancing over the entire political history of Hooghly, where it's beautifully kind of said that how it came much under the Mughal recognition. But what is important is that there was a siege of Hooghly that had taken place in 1632. Due to the siege, the entire site, the urban site, was completely destroyed. Certain very rare archival materials in the church still has the maps that is preserved to show the older settlement sites of it. After 1632, we see there was a story of a miracle. If you visit the Bengal church, the frescoes in the church, they kind of talk about the miracle that had taken place in the court of Akbar, where the missionaries were captured and taken to them, and they were thrown in front of the elephants, but the elephants did not kill them. And Akbar thought that they were the men of war, and therefore he let them free. And in return, he also gave them 760 bighas of land. Now, that is the version of the church, but if we look for historical validity, it is still very contested as to how they got 760 bighas of land. I have looked through several archives, but still I haven't come to much of a very ponderous historical narrative which would tell me that yes, this is the document which kind of has given to them. Coming to the story of how this church then became the focal point of entire people going in, and a society that kind of came in. We see the church, after being established in 1599, played a very crucial role in the development of the urban landscape of Hooghly. This is because churches that was slowly start to be settled in after the Portuguese came, the French, the Danes, the Danish, and then the English. We see with them came the missionaries. The churches were the focal point of settlement. They served as the center for community gatherings, fostering social cohesion and sense of belonging. Now, this sense of community attracted people to live in close proximity of the church, especially those who had converted to this new Western faith, contributing to the growth of local urban community. And in the duration of the Portuguese presence, the port town of Hooghly saw the growth of a Catholic population, which in turn led to the growth of the infrastructural developments in Hooghly. So apart from the port factory houses, slowly by the 17th century, we see the Bengal slowly expanding, marketplaces coming up, educational centers coming in. The oldest schools in Bengal is St. John's School, and we see the Church of Bengal, apart from establishing various centers of urbanization, also led to the settlement of various family members by giving them plots of land, and therefore the urban facilities kind of grew about. So that's why the focal point was the church, and around it in a concentric circle, we see the community was slowly developing. Of course, the story changes with the coming up of the British and how the power of the Portuguese kind of wanes. But we see Hooghly, Bengal, came to be a geographical area which is still kind of very much identified with the church, with the kind of the aura that place has. If you still visit the area, you will see that the areas that is just surrounding the church has very old structures of buildings. Of course, not much of an excavation has been done in that place. The parts of the ships that the Portuguese used to come, some of the masts and the harbors have been kind of preserved in the church. So in this entire idea that I'm trying to put forward, I would like to kind of come to the conclusion by saying that towns and cities should be studied and analyzed as repositories of power and spaces for interactions of power relations, because the rise and decline or the allocation of hierarchical position of these urban centers operates in accordance with the power equation. Bengal and the city of Bengal as it stands today is a living vestige of the Portuguese presence in Bengal. The church and the urban landscape has withstood the test of time and has become a pioneer of Catholic faith in Eastern India. It has also contributed significantly to the development and sustenance of Christian community from time of its inception. Urbanization in Bengal has a very varying perspective, qualities and components which have been manifested in varying degrees, intensities over the consequent period. The component of trade, in this case, penetrated the complex of domination in early modern Bengal and reasserted its prominence to the shifting and changing balance in the pattern of Bengal's urbanization and in the nature of urbanism. Thank you.
for presenting an excellent paper. Another house is open for the question. If you have any question, then I can take one or two questions due to the time constraint. No question?
The query, so when you have to get to these historical archives, right?
Yes.
So are there any, you got them from the Augustinian group? So the church still has the papers, they still have the older kind of archival letters and the papers that is kept there. And you have to take the permission of the prior general to access that. Are they written in English or Portuguese? So they are written in Portuguese, so what I did, I had to translate them to English to kind of know it.
Yeah. So what were the craft industries that were flourishing at the time? Because Portuguese, in Nagapattinam and all, they were
Yes.
purchasing glass
Yes.
and textile. So what kind of goods they were purchasing?
So the first of the items that they kind of got hold of was cotton trade and all, because that was, Bengal was very well known of that.
Major production center in this region.
So the Portuguese were confined to the region of Italy. They did not kind of intersected much more, because of course if you look at the history, they was not able to maintain themselves beyond the 17th century, and then we had the coming of the other European power structures coming in. So apart from the aspect of the cotton industry, they also kind of poured into the jute industry. They also kind of ventured into bringing about new kind of culinary aspect into it. So you also have the aspect of coming up with new cheese, which is still known as the Bengal cheese, which is very much kind of famous over there.
Two varieties, smoke and unsmoked.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm talking about
Okay, thank you. This is an excellent paper, and she has explained beautifully how the Portuguese settlements and that developed the urbanization, or most certain characters of urbanization in that particular region, and how the church controlled and regulated the inter-settlement patterns of that particular region. Thank you very much, Priscilla, for presenting an excellent paper. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Acharya. Sir, please come.